Hola, today we're going to talk about los mandatos informales. And mandatos is the Spanish word for commands, so this means we're talking about informal commands, or sometimes we call them to commands. When do we use commands? We use commands to tell someone to do something. So this doesn't always have to sound demanding. For example, we might say something like be careful or have a good weekend, and we would use a command. Or we might tell someone something like take out your homework. Informal commands, the ones that we're talking about today, are used when we're talking to someone that we would address in the to form. So we might use these commands when we're talking to our friends, or if we're talking to a younger sibling, or if it's a teacher talking to his or her student. When we're talking about commands, we have to keep in mind that there are two different kinds. There are affirmative commands and there are negative commands. The affirmative commands are used when we're telling someone to do something. For example, we might say close the window or set the table. On the other hand, the negative commands are what we use when we tell someone to not do something. For example, we might say don't close the door or don't go to the store. It's important that we realize this difference because these two types of commands are not formed the same way. So first we're going to talk about forming affirmative commands, and this is pretty simple. The regular affirmative commands are the same as the él or ella form in the present tense. So here we can see a chart with some examples. We have an AR, ER, and IR verb. So lavar, to wash. The él, ella form would be lava. So if we want to tell someone wash the dishes, we would just say lava los platos. Barrer is our example of an ER verb. The él, ella form is barre. So if we want to tell someone to sweep the floor, we would just say barre el suelo. And our last example of an IR verb, abrir, the él, ella form is abre. So we would say abre la puerta, open the door. There are some irregular affirmative commands. There are 8 verbs that have irregular affirmative commands. Here we can see the chart. So decir, we have di, hacer, haz, ir, ve, poner, pon, salir, sal, ser, sé, tener, ten, and venir, ven. So you can see that our affirmative commands here are short words. We don't add any sort of an ending onto them. That itself is the command. So these seem kind of random, but if we rearrange these, we can come up with a sentence to help us remember. So our sentence sounds like Vin Diesel has 10 weapons, eh? So you kind of have to say it with a German, Russian accent. Vin Diesel has 10 weapons, eh? So it's just a silly way to help you remember the irregular affirmative commands. All right, so para y piensa, I'm going to give you a second here to stop and think. How would you tell your younger sibling to do the following chores? So you have a place on your worksheet to go ahead and fill these in. Go ahead and hit stop now so that you have time to write in your answers. All right, let's take a look at what you got. So if we wanted to tell them to iron the clothes, we would say plancha la ropa. If we want to say set the table, pon la mesa. Go to the store, ve a la tienda. Or if we want to say mow the lawn, corta el césped. Hopefully you got those all right. Now we're going to talk about forming negative commands. So the negative commands are a little bit more tricky to form, but still not too difficult. So the first thing is that we start with the yo form in the present tense. Once we have the yo form of the verb, we drop the o, and then we're going to add the opposite ending. So this means if it's an AR verb, we're going to add ES. If it's an ER or IR verb, then we're going to add AS. And the last thing, we have to make sure that we don't forget the no, because these are negative commands, so we're telling someone to not do that. So let's take a look at a few examples. So the first one, if we want to say don't run, remember the verb to run is correr. So we start with the yo form, corro, we drop the o, and since correr is an ER verb, we are going to add AS. So when we would say don't run, we would say no corras. Another example, if we want to say don't make, for example, talking about don't make the bed, remember that we're going to start with the verb hacer. Now notice that this one has an irregular yo form. So it's hago, it's one of our go verbs. We drop the o, but that g still stays there. Hacer is an ER verb, so we add our opposite ending, which is as. And therefore, to say don't make the bed, we would say no hagas la cama. Now again, just like the affirmative commands, we have some irregular negative commands. And the reason that this happens is that there are some yo forms and then that don't end in an o. So we can't just follow the regular rule of starting with the yo form and then dropping the o. Here we can see those four verbs. Notice that these yo forms end in y, so we have to have an irregular negative command. So for dar, we would say no des, estar, no estés, ir, no vayas, and ser, we would say no seas. So make sure that you get those filled out on your sheet. And again, we have a para y piensa, a stop and think. How would we tell your friend to not do the following things? So again, go ahead and hit pause to give yourself time to fill these out. Let's take a look. So to say, don't be scared, we would say, no tengas miedo. Or if we want to say, don't be sad, no estés triste. Don't open the door, no abras la puerta. Don't tell secrets, no digas secretos. So notice that we have the opposite ending on all of these. Now let's take a look at some práctica. So I want you to translate the following sentences into Spanish, but be sure that you're paying close attention to if it's an affirmative command or a negative command, and be sure that you follow the rules according to which type of command it is. So go ahead and review your notes, and then hit pause so that you can fill these out. All right, let's take a look. If we want to say speak Spanish, habla español. It's an affirmative command. We just need to use the el, ella form of the verb, habla. Don't prepare the food. No prepares la comida. Don't go to the park. Remember, this is one of our irregular ones. So we would say no vayas al parque. Put the books on the table. Pon los libros en la mesa. It's also an irregular one, but it's an affirmative irregular. And the last one, don't eat the hamburger. No comas la hamburguesa. So hopefully you got those all right. Take a look back at your notes. If there are any parts that you don't understand, please be sure that you put a question mark by that so that you can ask your teacher in class tomorrow.